All right, so I was a little late on the applause, just a pinch. Anyway, welcome to day number 2 of the Road Rally sequels, everybody. Going to open the chat room so I can see who's there. Hello, you guys. Today is a very special guest, Marcus Cohen, also known as Kano, who joined us like 8 days ago for an episode of TAXITV that was so incredibly good. People absolutely loved it. And we really didn't get to go very in-depth as to why Marcus is so incredibly fast at being productive and producing music. So we're going to make that the singular focus of today's show. But for those of you who didn't see last week's show, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Kano is a critically acclaimed multi-genre artist and producer from Philadelphia, whose talent has made an impression all over the music industry. Since 2001, Kano has been a professional recording engineer with his own studio and production company, writing, recording, producing, and mixing for up-and-coming artists as well as legends like Earth, Wind & Fire, Carly Simon, Neil Diamond, Justin Bieber, B.B. Winans, Kenny Loggins, and many more. He began writing for Sync in 2016 after joining Taxi. Gosh, that was only 7 years ago. And that turned out to be life-changing. Now his songs and instrumentals are heard all over film and TV. Shows like Empire, Power, All American, Cobra Kai, Good Trouble, Young and the Restless, and hundreds more. His music can also be heard in major ads for companies like Samsung. Oh, I actually had a Samsung TV giving me problems. Can you call them for me? AT&T, Honda, Yamaha, Marshalls, and more. He is the ultimate one-stop shop in the music business. Welcome back, Marcus.
Thank you so much. Sure. I'm happy to be back. Thanks for having me back, Mike. I love it.
I love having you here. The show last week was it was like perfection. So you also mentioned during the show that you've got like 3,000 tracks out there in the wild now?
Yeah, it's more around closer to 2,000, but yeah, it's about 2,000.
Okay, so yeah, I tend to exaggerate a little. But that's a lot. Anything over 1,000 is like, you're in the zone. 2,000 is super impressive. And I know just from knowing a lot of our high-end taxi members over the years that generally speaking, the people who are earning like a sustainable income, that seems to happen between 1,000 and 1,500 tracks. So I hope your income is healthy and sustainable, and that lasts an entire lifetime and on to your children when you've passed through the pearly gates with your harp, and you'll be doing cues with harp cues.
I'll still be working. I will still be working. Absolutely.
You probably will. I wouldn't doubt it. So I think you mentioned that you can get 3 in a good day, 3 songs done. That's not just little, do instrumental cues. 3 songs with lyrics. So I want to break this down with Marcus, have him do a step-by-step telling us about his process from beginning to end, from reading the brief the first time to sending the files out to the client when he's all done. I know that you were very experienced already as an engineer-producer when you joined Taxi, and as a songwriter as well. But the engineering, for a lot of people, the engineering part is the hard part. Maybe they're not familiar with DAWs, or maybe they're not so fast yet. You were, so you had that advantage. But the fact that you're able to write so quickly, both musically and lyrically, that part is really astonishing to me. As you and I both know, once you get, your hands almost become... she says there's a bit of echo and slapback. You know what? I'm going to go to headphones. I just got handed a note. I know, but my headphone just...
Sounds good from here.
Talk to me for a sec.
Talk. Check. 1, 2. Talkity. Checking for the...
Did that help?
Seems okay here.
Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Once your hands get used to going to certain places and clicking on certain things, it becomes second nature. But coming up with a new melody, coming up with a lyric in a short amount of time, that amazes me. And that is why you are so productive, is that you're able to do that. And you did mention in the show the other day that Sometimes it's your collaborator, that while you're working on the track, they're working on the lyric. Whatever it is, you've got it down to a science. And a lot of new members get frustrated with Taxi because they come with an old catalog and they try and do the square peg round hole thing, and they try and pitch stuff that they wrote 4 years ago or 10 years ago or 3 months ago. And they hope that the music is just so good that whoever is on the listening end of it will go, well, it doesn't really fit the brief, but I'm going to use it anyway because I love it so much. That never works out well.
Especially if they put a lot of money into creating that music catalog that they're trying to pitch. It's hard sometimes to hear that it's not working for everything.
Yeah. And they get very frustrated, very angry with us, very angry at the industry. They walk away and give up on the dream. So this episode is my little love letter to those of you who do that, so that you can understand and learn how to be as productive as Marcus is, because that is the secret to earning a nice income with Sync, is just making a lot of music and doing it every day. And don't just make 11 things, put it on a CD, and then, after you've got a garage full of 750 CDs that didn't sell, well, I'm going to join Taxi and pitch it through there. So let's just start the process and walk through it. So let's say you just got a Taxi listing that asked for West Coast hip-hop, male vocals. Take it away. Where do you start?
Yeah. So definitely the preamble of that is making it a practice and checking those briefs daily like it's the mail. I mean, email is mail, but going to those briefs, going to those requests, and being able to choose what mood you're in for that day, what you think you're going to be able to create, what feels the closest to either what style you're best at, or even just what mood you're in at the moment. So I get a West Coast hip hop brief in the morning. The first thing I'm doing is I'm listening to those briefs. The references. I'm listening to them with probably a different ear each time. I will certainly be right away. I'll be listening for engineering stuff. I'm listening for what era it sounds like it's from. If it's West Coast hip hop, it's probably 90s-esque. I'm listening to the production styles they're using. That's already starting to form an idea in my head of what I'd start with. If the drums are vintage sounding, if they sound really crisp, does it sound like an old style drum loop that they got from a funk record? So I'm thinking of what drums I'm going to use. I'm thinking of what VST I'm going to go to, and in my mind already, I'm starting to craft the sound. So I'm really studying the references. That's huge. And if there's 3, which Taxi always gives, which is great, I'm listening to certain elements that I would feel comfortable with producing from each. So maybe on that first one, it was some really dusty sounding drums, and that's what really stood out to me. That's also I'm looking for. What's standing out to me about this record? Is it mostly vocal driven, where the instrumentalist is sort of playing second fiddle, or is this like really kicking and the vocals are sort of playing in with the beat, which a lot of that style of hip hop really is. So I'm studying the briefs and I'm trying to borrow / be inspired by an element from each. So maybe that second one has a more funky bass line, which a lot of West Coast style hip hop has. And the third one is a wiry sort of Moog sounding synth. So now in my mind, I've got the building blocks to what I'm going to create. I'm always listening to production style first, because that's how I start. I'm not usually thinking about vocals at that moment. I may be, and I'll go back and listen to the references again, but I may be on the first go round just listening to the production style of the vocals. Is it muffled? Does it sound distant? Is it a shouty kind of vocal? But mainly I'm listening for production style, engineering style, and that will inspire what I do next. I'd say 8 times out of 10, I'm starting with some form of chord or riff. Usually it's a keyboard chord progression.
Before we go into that, one question we get asked all the time: do I pay more attention to what the brief or the listing says, or to the references? My personal feeling is we create them for you to find the commonalities in the references and then reread the listing and go, okay, now I understand. The commonality of the references lines up with the written word. Do you go through a process like that or think about what's written
Yes.
much?
In my mind, though, what's written in the brief is going to supersede anything that the references are playing.
Okay.
Whether it's taxi or not, I trust the references, but the problem with references is they don't match what they need. That's why they're not the song, they're the reference. Kind of like this, kind of like that. None of them have it, though.
Right.
So, um, they're so I'm looking at what's written in the brief. Every now and then, now this doesn't apply to taxi, but every now and then the you're listening through the references, but what the brief is asking for is so specific. None of those songs are really even close to hitting that. So you have to kind of realize that what they want is more important than the songs they tried to find to sound like it. So that's why the engineering style, the production style is going to be first for me, because that way I'm not going to do a fourth song that doesn't work for them because I stayed too close to the references that they didn't need or they would have used them. I mean, I realize that some of those are going to be too expensive and things like that. But the point is, if you get too close to a brief, to a reference, I keep saying that, if you get too close to a reference, you become a reference and you're not the placement. The placement needs to be what they are describing they need for the scene, what they are describing they need for whatever it's being used for. If it's an ad, that's going to take precedent always.
All right.
The written.
So thank you for going into that, and sorry for the interruption.
Oh,
Please
no.
proceed.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah. Most of the time, I'm starting with some sort of chord progression that I will come up with sort of on the fly. I'll play a bunch of chords until I like them. I'm not like a super amazing theory keyboard player. I'm more play by feel. I love ninth chords and jazzy sounding chords. A lot of the times I'm starting with stuff like that. To me, I can probably build anything off a nice jazzy chord progression, be it hip hop, uh, you know, the new kind of pop that's really everywhere. It's kind of like a new disco. I call it. I don't even know what it's called. I know they still call it pop, but to me, it's like a new disco, or trap. I mean, anything I can start with a nice, good chord progression and then change the sound with. I find that one of the benefits that I feel like I have over not being a good instrumentalist at any certain instrument is I don't always start with the same instrument. I know I can only speak for my brother. My brother's a guitar player, and I know sometimes it's hard to find inspiration when you're sitting with the same instrument, playing the same chords uh, on the same instrument that sound the same. Sometimes it feels like, oh, I've played this already. Whereas if you play the same chord progression on the piano, it sounds totally different when you change it to a synth pad and when the drums that you add. So I love being able to feel like I'm not limited because I'm not the greatest keyboard player in the world that knows all kinds of crazy changes and modulations. Excuse me. I just go with what feels good and sounds good. So I'll start with a chord progression and start adding drums usually after that. So a nice good tip of something I use a drum software called Atlas. And the reason why I love this so much, it's essentially just somewhere where you can load in all your drum sounds. And it has my favorite thing in music production, a randomize button. And this randomize button will randomize my drum kit. So it maps all my kicks, all my snares. It takes, depending on your drum library, it takes a couple hours sometimes to load everything. But once you're loaded in, it creates a map of drum sounds. And once you generate a kit, it's choosing a new kick, a new snare, a new clap, new hi-hats every time, and you can just keep hitting the button, and that saves me a ton of time. In the past, I wasted a ton of time trying to find drum sounds, looking through kicks, because essentially I don't know what I'm looking for right off the bat. Sometimes I'm just looking for inspiration. So to be able to hit one button and have a full drum kit there and be able to change it out on the fly, that saves me a ton of time. So I love Atlas for that. So that's a time saver. Um, then I'll go to my bass and start adding a bass line. And usually at that point, I will copy my like 8-bar progression or so. I'll copy it across the DAW timeline and start maybe deleting some things here and there. But then I'll start adding.
Deleting notes.
No, deleting, like I'll delete certain places where the drums come in, drop the drums here and there. So essentially I have my full arrangement and I can delete pieces here and there. And then I'll start adding on the fly. I usually get I get the song to where I call it like a blueprint state, where I have drums, bass, chords, something cool to come in on the hook, some sort of synth or strings, maybe a pluck sound that I add in verse 2. I realize that by the time verse 2 comes around, ear candy is very important. Something should be different than verse 1. But at that point, I sort of stop. I also do a lot of mixing as I go. So as I'm adding those drums, I am checking my gain staging. I'm making sure that I don't give myself too much work to do later. Everything is starting to take its shape as I go, giving everything its place in the mix as I go.
And that you just said something so critical in the 30 seconds leading up to that, which is you're taking stuff out. So you're basically using a producer slash engineer's ear, because we all know the more stuff in the box, the harder. I don't mean I should. The more stuff in the basket, the harder it is to mix. And mixes get exponentially easier if you don't clutter. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right. And so you've already laid that groundwork. That's brilliant.
Yep. You get your rhythm section down, get a good groove going. And at that point, your drums, your bass, and your lead instrument, whatever that is, if it's guitar, if it's piano, Rhodes, that should be really gelling together nicely. Your level should be looking good on the master. If there's a certain element you want to stand out, so we're talking about West Coast hip hop now, that's going to be the kick drum. That kick drum and that bass have got to be really, really in sync and really, really in the pocket. So at this stage, I may drop the fader of all the other instruments and just leave kick and bass up. And turn my monitors to a level where I like the way the kick and bass sound.
Does that mean making them fairly loud, but not loud enough to damage your ears?
At my master level, keeping my master level at the right, as if I actually do mix as if I was mixing into an analog console, because I learned from guys who did so. And it actually, believe it or not, DAW people, because I'm a DAW person, your plugins will thank you if you gain stage as if you were working through a console, because a lot of plugins have sweet spots. We think we could just slap a compressor on and go, and you can, but a lot of the times thinking of gain staging before mixing is just very, very important. So I will get those to a really good level, and then I'll start inching my instruments back in. That way I know that my kick and my bass are up front and ready to go. I'm not trying to make room for them. They are up front and heavy, and then everything else is coming up slightly behind it. So once I get that skeleton, that blueprint going, I will lower the volume, either of my speakers or just my master fader, and start letting ideas flow. I will completely change gears and get out of producer mind and start going into songwriter.
So you have no melody yet, but you do have a chord progression.
I've got a chord progression. I've got bass. I've got drums. I probably have something that's in the hook. I have a skeleton, something that would just is good enough to write to. And that also helps come up with those melodic ideas, because a lot of the times if you're producing just for instrumental, or if you're producing without this sort of mindset, those melodies will start coming to you and you'll start laying them down as soon as they do. I know that. I've done it. Like, as soon as the melody comes to you, I'm laying it down. But that melody might have been your verse that was coming to you. You might be misinterpreting the download. Maybe that was your verse. Maybe that was your hook. Maybe it was a synth line, but at that moment, I start changing brains and letting the music tell me what it wants to do as far as lyric melody. I'm always melody first. I'm very, very rarely a lyric first guy. Maybe it's because of my being a producer, but the melodies start coming in. I very often will hum the hook. I'll start humming the verse. I might record those hums. I might not. It depends. But those hums and those dots, like my mom calls them, those become the timing for the lyrics. Those help me understand my syllable count. Loosely, because if you're just going ba 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 ba, then you'll have a lot of one syllable words. but understanding where my timing will be. If it's so, again, we're in West Coast rap. Uh, I am putting myself in that old Cadillac, you know, with Dr. Dre playing. I'm assuming Dr. Dre's a reference. I'm assuming Snoop Dogg's a reference. I'm assuming E40's a reference. I'm listening. I'm listening to that, those synths. I'm getting in that groove. I'm getting in that mindset. My face is probably changing. I am probably doing what actors. I'm not an actor, but like getting into part. Like I'm getting into the role. Also why I sort of lower the music sometimes, because if you some of us songwriters will know, if you ever like have music playing and you go to the bathroom, the music's playing like somewhere in another room, you get all these ideas while you're in the bathroom. You're like, oh my
Right.
God, it's like you barely hear the music. So I do that. I don't know. I lower the music, and it gives room for sometimes the ideas to start flowing, but I'm really trying to get into that feel. And we talked about this before, but reference wise, I'm thinking, all right, what will come on after this? What will come on after Gin and Juice? What will come right on after that? So that helps with topics. And then I will probably give it a new title at that point. I'll start thinking of a title. I have one that's West Coast style. It's called Riding Shotgun, and came to be in sort of a way like that. My mom actually made the beat for that, funny enough. Um, Very Dr. Dre, very West Coast style. But I'm listening to their timing. I'm listening to the way they handle their voice, because if it's a West Coast rap song, it's totally different than an East Coast rap song. Their rap timing is different. The way they use their lyrics are different. The stuff they're talking about is different. So I'm getting into character at that point. I have to get into character, even still before lyrics are written. I'm now just about getting to the title, and that title is going to spark the hook, and then that hook is going to spark the verses. Is probably about the order I'm still going now in this West Coast hip hop song. Um, but even before I'm writing lyrics, I'm still, yeah. So I'm just getting
Mm-hmm.
in the group. I'm hearing my track. I'm listening to what's different, and then I'm A-Bing back and forth to the references. I'm going back and forth. All right, you know what? As I'm going back and forth to these references, I'm noticing in my instrumental, this kick is not doing what their kicks are doing. All three of these have something happening with their kick. So, A being. I'm still not even at the lyrics yet, probably. And then I'll just sit there, and out of all that little inspiration I've got, I will turn off the music and start writing. And usually the pen probably doesn't leave the paper until the song is finished. Um,
How long, on average? I know obviously this has got to be all over the map for a range of time, but if you had to pick kind of an average amount of time that it takes you to write a lyric for a 2.5 minute sync song, how long might it take you to write?
since you like we're doing averages, I'll do 30 to 45 for each section. I'll
Okay.
try not to get to an hour on that beginning part of the instrumental. I'll try not to spend an hour on the lyrics, and I'll try not to spend an hour on the mixing. So I'm trying to keep it all under an hour so that I have enough time in the day to get a bunch done. But this one being from scratch, uh, yeah, I would like to try to keep it under an hour for those three sections, being creating the instrumental, getting the lyrics written and recorded, and then getting the mix and master done and
Um,
out.
I threw a West Coast hip hop thing because I know hip hop is what you grew up with and what you love and comes easy and naturally to you. If it were a genre other than hip hop, would the process still be pretty much the same?
Process would be exactly the same. I would be
Okay.
getting into character the same way if you said, now, if you got the role to play, King Lear, or if you got the role to play Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber, would the process be the same? Yeah, I'd be studying his character. I'd be trying to figure out how to get in that mode with my body. So I'm doing the same things with the inspiration that's sort of flooding in. I'm trying to box it and categorize it, and figure out what to do next, and not get too scatterbrained where I'm doing too, like, that's why often when my mom and I are writing together, sometimes she'll be finished with the lyrics before I'm done a certain section. I can't even really switch gears until I'm ready. Like, lyrics, I'm not thinking about them. I'm not They're not entering my brain. That door is closed for that moment while I'm working on the instrumental. It's
I,
all letting it in.
I want to mention that Marcus has referenced his mom a few times. His mom is of my generation. She, on her own, had an amazing career, as a singer, writing commercials for merchants. She is a force of nature. Clearly, you got that part of her gene makeup. And they work together quite often. They're partners in every sense of the word. And I know you might think it's like, wow, bring your kid to school day, but they are really equal partners. And it's amazing to me that, I know her approximate age. I mean, she and I think, are very close. And the fact that she still has her ears tuned to what's happening today, and she's not stuck in, Carly Simon, James Taylor, Carole King, the big hits of our era, says a lot about the way her brain works. So clearly you got a lot of that.
That's huge. Yeah. Being able to adapt, being able to hear what's going on and not being stuck in your era. That's tough. It's tough for all of us because we all love the music we came up on. And when we get the briefs for the stuff that we would love to make, that's always fun. But you got to be able to have the fun just doing it, have fun with the process, because all of it is exciting. I was talking to my brother yesterday and I was like, I just got so excited to make music because I got this new plugin and I was finished a song and I realized I never even installed the plugin. Like, never even installed the plugin. It's just whatever gets our, juices going, whatever gets us to keep creating, whatever keeps it from feeling old or repetitive. I mixed and was a recording engineer for so long that being able to start writing for sync reinvigorated my love for the music business in general, reinvigorated my love for writing songs and being able to be an artist again. All of that was reawakened writing for sync. But I'll tell you that writing 3 songs a day and repeating the process, rinse, repeat, there was a time where I was starting to be like, oh man, this is like, I don't know how, where's the fun, where the fun can be. And then I took a week where I mixed an album for an artist, and it reinvigorated my love for mixing again and finding plugins and reaching for compressors. So there's just whatever it takes to remind you how much fun the whole thing is, whatever part of it you do. You don't have to do as much as I do to fall in love with the process of what you do. I know people that every time they get an idea for a lyric, it's just as much fun for them as, each time. So it's just about reigniting our passion in whatever way we can, whatever way that happens.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because so many people who aren't doing sync yet and are thinking about starting to write for sync, their fear is that it's filling orders, it's not creative, it won't stimulate any artistry within them. Every single person, every single successful Taxi member I've asked that question, they all say no. It invigorates you, and it's a different form of artistry, but it still satisfies that thing inside of you that makes you want to create constantly. And because it's structured, you've got deadlines, you've got a brief to work from.
Absolutely.
You're not just sitting around hitting the bong going, I wonder what kind of music I'm going to make today. You're on a mission, and that actually gives adrenaline to your creative side. And they say it's actually equally as good, if not better. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you.
And you made a great point with the deadlines and the structure. I have very frequent collaborators that if I send them something and I say, I need this tomorrow, they get it. And when I send them an instrumental and say, whenever you have a chance, I don't get anything back. There are certain people that really, and they've told me, they're like, you know what, you just lie to me and tell me you have a deadline, or it won't end up happening, because when you tell me I need it tomorrow, she was like, I kick right into gear and I start writing. And very often I'm like, all right, since I have to rush, I'm going to make this, I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to and then all of a sudden she goes, oh, at the end of it, I really love the song. And you don't know how many times that happens to me. I'm not going to sit here and say that every time I do that process, I am trying to be, John Lennon and McCartney, or I'm trying to, be Stevie Wonder, where I'm like, okay, here we go. Song number 2,148 is going to be the best song I've ever written. I think maybe just me, but that could get in the way. That didn't work for me when I was doing that when I was 18 at all. It just, you go, I'm like, how much stuff works when you make that face and try at it? Like, um, I've written so many songs that just came to me that I was like, all right, I'm just in a hurry. Let's go. I think that, whatever your muse of choice is, I'm not going to like start getting like spiritual or anything like that, but whatever you choose as your muse, um, if you get out of the way and don't try to, try, I think you just let the muse work, and the muse works really well when you get out of the way. Um, when I start thinking about it, I very often get stuck. When I start trying to do something like, all right, I'm going to do a topic that I've never done before. This brief is vague, and then I find myself just sitting there. If I let it come, it just comes. And almost always, I'm impressed with the song that came out more than I thought I would be. And I don't mean that as like a pat myself on the back. People used to ask me at the rally, how do you write so many songs? My answer was always, I don't. I'm not. I'm just the vessel where they come through. I just like, I'm not even Michael. I'm not even that good of a producer. I just get out of the way. And I have sat at the keyboard that's actually sitting in front of me and tried to play things. And I'm like, I suck at this. And when I just get out of the way, so much cool stuff comes when I don't try, when I don't pressure myself, when I'm not judging myself. When I can fully be present in the moment creating music, it's a beautiful thing. I've often said I wish I could take that to other facets of my life, where I can feel that in the moment. It's difficult, but this is my thing. This is what I'm good at. I don't have too many other things that I'm good at, so I really just live this to the fullest.
I had Lamont Dozier on stage at the Road Rally probably 10 years ago now. He was my keynote interview, and I'd met him before. Deb and I had gone out to dinner with Lamont and his wife, Barbara. So we were friendly, and I knew a lot about his history, but I asked him the question. It's like, how do you get in the mode to write? Pretty much like the conversation we're having now. And he said something very similar to what you just said. You're the only two people that have ever said that to me that I wholly believe the words as they're leaving your lips, because you're both, well, he's recently passed away, but you're both freakish in your productivity. He said, I just open my mind and God pours it in. And you're saying the same thing. And that is a gift. I mean, not everybody's got that, but you know what? I think it's in your case, and maybe in Lamont's case as well. It's a gift that you earn by conditioning yourself to get yourself to the point. It's like, I can't learn how to meditate. I've never been able to chill out enough to meditate. But friends of mine who do it quite effectively say it just for them took years, and then once the switch is thrown, you can get back to that state. So it sounds like maybe you and Lamont Dozier both did it so much and did it with in earnest so much that at some point you're able to literally like lift the lid and down it comes.
That's right. Well, I do want to correct one thing you said, though, and you said not everybody's got that. Not everybody's got that in the same way.
Okay.
But everybody's got that. Everybody's got that. And that's so one of the reasons why I love coming on here, because I want everyone to know, as my, teachers said to me, if I can do this, you can do this. There's nothing that special about me, man. I'm telling you, other than I've been doing it for a long time. Everyone's got that in a different way. It doesn't, I mean, we're all people watching this. I don't think there's too many people trying to go in, or pre-med watching me give advice, so we're all in the same group here. We've all been to the rallies. I know a lot of you, and the ones I don't, I know you too. That's why the rally's so amazing. We know each other. It's whether you're doing folk music or reggae or pop or rap, you've got that thing that if you get out of the way, it'll come. It might be lyrics. You might be a bass player. So it doesn't come in the same way. But the way that I can do the different things that I do is I just I open to that part of it. For so long, I didn't do all three things. I was just mixing. I sort of found myself, I had a failed record deal, back when I was 18, and then I recorded people, and I became a good engineer because I kept feeling like I needed to be better. I watched the videos, I kept learning, I kept getting new softwares, and I learning those inside and out and putting the work in. There's nothing that I did that anyone else can't do. Anyone else can't do. You just have to put the time in. When my mom and my brother bought me the Taxi membership, and her and I went into this partnership for the first time, we said we were going to go all in. That's something that made this work for me, Michael. I didn't half-ass Taxi. I didn't go into Taxi thinking I already know what I'm doing, and Taxi just going to be the way to prove it to me that I'm the best at what I do. I made those mistakes trying to make my catalog work, and pretty quickly I adapted and went, wait a minute, this isn't what the deal is. And I went to the rally and I talked to the guys, the big wigs, and they told me what they wanted. And all you got to do is listen. And then they love you for it. They
Yeah.
love you for it. The more you listen, the more they love you. You get them a song on time and it's what they wanted. And now you have a friend. You don't just have somebody you could send music to. You have a friend now. Like, this is so very doable. And even if like all you do is play one instrument and that's your contribution to the record, or if you're the lyricist, or if you're the vocalist, if you open in that same way and let it flow that same way, that's everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. It's all there. All there.
I love that it's not false encouragement, because we could look at Matt Vanderbo, who literally,
Yep.
by his own public admission, literally knew nothing. And I loved when he told me the story the first time, and every time after that, when he turned on Pro Tools, because he got tired of spending money at a third-party studio, he figured out that he couldn't afford to keep doing that ambient production music. And he turned on Pro Tools, got the splash screen with the logo, and he goes, now what? He didn't even
Yeah.
own a black and white keyboard. The guy was literally playing notes on a QWERTY keyboard. And now, I think his website says something like his music can be heard every minute of the day all over the world somewhere. And so, yeah, and he says that same thing you said. If I could do it, anybody can.
Right. And he
And
was one of my mentors coming in,
yeah,
and somebody I met at the rally and on the forums that was a huge help right away. We hit it off right away. And yes, he lives by that same motto. But he kept working at it. It
yeah.
wasn't magic. He didn't do something magic. There's nothing magic. He didn't bribe you too many times. And, there's no, it wasn't like there was an easy way in for Matt or I or, anyone. It's just, you keep on working. You keep on getting with the right people. I mean, we talked about this last time with Casey. Casey and I live 10 minutes from each other, but we met at the rally and now we work together all the time. You meet your people, and it's a beautiful flow, man. And the only reason now, if I worked that process that I talked to you about, I wouldn't necessarily be able to get 3 songs done a day. I mean, you heard the timeline. There's not that much time. So the 3 songs, I'll repeat for anyone who didn't see the last one. Usually it's one song like that. It's one collaboration song where I'm either doing the vocals or the music or some, combination or something like that. And it's a work for hire. So somebody is just hiring me to do something. So each of the 3 songs I do in a day that I try to do are a little bit different. They have a little bit of a different, process because but it's still one piece of that trifecta. I'm either sitting down and creating the instrumental, I'm writing lyrics and recording lyrics, I'm mixing, doing some form of the 3. And
Let's
that's
go back to the process. I think we stopped somewhere around the vocals, but you hadn't sung a note yet. Let's talk about the vocals. So now you've got the lyric written, and let's assume that this isn't a collaboration. You're flying solo on this one. You've written your lyric. How many passes do you take on the vocal? How picky do you get? That sort of stuff.
okay. Let's detail it. So, 2 ways that I do this. As I'm writing, if I'm writing the hook, let's say I'm doing the hook first, which is probably typical. I usually get a title. I work off a title most of the time. That title will give me the idea for what I want to do with the hook. So as I'm coming up with either the melody, I have a talkback mic here. Most engineers have some sort of talkback mic to the booth. I will take my talkback mic and either hum into it or I will sing into it so that I don't lose it. I don't lose that melody. Like if I write the hook and then I move to the verse, it may happen that I forgot how I was singing the melody. how I was singing the, if it's rap, I know we're talking about rap now, but it's better advice if I give for singing too. Like, so if I'm writing the hook, I don't want to forget how I sang it. Even rap, I don't want to forget how I timed it. So I may record it in my talkback mic, or I might just go right in the booth and record the hook, and just so that I have it, and I'll fly it to all the places the hook is. So if I want to record something so that I don't lose it. That being said, or very seldom do I lose the idea. Those ideas are just like locked in there. But I do want to record it in some way. Recently, I think I've been doing more just record it, going in there and record it. I loop record. So I will set a region in my DAW to loop itself. I will hit, seeing as how, other than my 7-year-old who loves assisting me in my work, he is in school most of the day. So I will hit record and I will run into the booth and I will let that hook loop around a bunch of times. So I'll sing it again, I'll sing it again, I'll sing it again, I'll sing it again, until I like it. And at this point, the only reason that I'm probably doing that is because I probably didn't learn it yet. Like, I just wrote it down, so I'm trying to find how I want to sing it, how do I want to time it, and usually by the last take, I'm okay. Now, cool tip in doing it that way is when I come out of the booth, usually I'm using the last take I did because it was probably the one I was happiest with. But now that I've looped it and recorded 4 or 5 times, I can chop out a word and go with one of the other takes. If I like the, the melody, if I like the note I sang a little better, maybe the vibrato was weird, I can just boop boop and choose the from take 2. So that's a really good way that I like to comp vocals in my DAW, because I'm loop recording. So I don't, just in case I have a better take in there. I'm usually using that last take though.
Because I'm somewhat ignorant of the use of DAWs, I'm an old analog 2-inch tape person. When you say loop record, I know what that means. You've got it on auto loop, so it just keeps playing the same section over and over. Is it recording? Is it non-destructively saving every pass you do?
It is. It is
Okay.
making what's called takes. It is just storing them in a folder of takes. Typically, I'll do 3 or 4. I try not to do more than that. If I'm doing more than that, it's because I just don't know what I'm singing yet. I'm just trying to come up with it. But if I'm actually singing a take, it'll probably be between 2 or 4. And yes, they'll store in a little folder underneath the track in the DAW, and in my DAW, which is Persona Studio One, the last take, or the one you're on, will show, and you can make any of them show, or you can make all of them show. But I like to keep one in view, and then I could highlight a word or a phrase and right click and change to any of the takes to see how that word would sound from that take, or how that phrase would sound, or maybe I started it better. But typically I don't comp too much. That's just, something that's a good tip to have. I'm usually not happy with those earlier takes, so I'm usually not using them. It's really like, I'll go, okay, I got that one. So once I've done that, I will come out and I'll start writing the verse, and I'll probably go in and record the verse. So once I've got that done and I have the song fully sort of recorded, I may go in and start adding some harmony sections. I may do that as I go, but I might just get the whole skeleton recorded and then start adding harmonies in select places. Believe it or not, most supervisors, production people, they're not looking for you to overcomplicate the songs too much. I know it's hard to hear, but I've heard it enough from people that I trust that once I started realizing simpler is better for TV placements, simpler is better, maybe not for ads, maybe that you want to have a lot of cool stuff happening, or for trailers. I don't want to speak on that, but for most TV placements, they don't want you to overcomplicate things. So if you're trying to make this nuts arrangement that does all kinds of stuff in and out, they're going to cut it out. I've had one of my trusted supervisors go, enough with the intros, nobody cares, we cut them out. I'm sorry. And I've had to work with certain people where I'm like, look, I'm going to give you a mix of this song, creative mix that you like, and then I'm going to make a mix for this supervisor who wants me to keep the drums in the whole time.
Yeah.
He does not want me to mute the drums. I know that's annoying, because in the bridge you wanted the guitars to swell and to be a cool thing, and so do I. So I'm going to give you a mix that sounds like that, but the one that's going to the supervisor is the one that he asked for.
I'm glad you brought excuse me, I'm glad you brought up simplicity. I need a swig too.
Yeah.
Again, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So the root question is, as you're writing lyrics, do you have to remind yourself you're doing this for sync and keep it simple and keep the furniture out of the room? Or is it just ingrained at this point and you know better than to say, I kissed you under the Eiffel Tower on New Year's Eve at, 2 a.m. as the snow was falling, makes it completely unusable. So you just know that. It's like learning a new instrument.
Yeah, me particularly, this is what I do. Any music that I have as an artist is because of this. So I'm always thinking about sync. And because of that, I don't curse, even though I can, unless they're asking. We want an explicit song for this. Very rarely happens, but it just did. And I did have one of my collaborators, actually a few, got the song in. But sometimes they ask for that. But I am always thinking this is going to be on TV. I don't want to screw up its placement. I'm more thinking, how can I make this get placed more than what I'm pitching it to?
Okay. Which is great. That's why all the library owners love you, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for one solution. They're looking for a solution that could go in 10 different kinds of things.
And even if it's specific, they want a breakup song. You could still find a way to make the hook usable over and over again, and it's have good breakup stuff in the verses. You give them what they want while making it available to be used over and over again. Some things are very specific and you have no choice. Like we talked about the names one last time. That's not going to get placed anywhere else other than what they asked for. But that's sometimes fun too. That's the fun. And that's what keeps it creative, because and that's why for me, and I don't want to downplay this to anyone who does it, I couldn't do the production instrumental albums, because the libraries would go, okay, now that you got this one, give me 15 more like it. And that killed my creativity. I once I'm done with that style I did, I'm on to another. I'd rather give you 15 completely different instrumentals for you to use in different scenarios than 15 of the same track. That was a creativity killer for me. So I love waking up and opening the emails and going, okay, K-pop, that's new one. Or, okay, this one, they want jazzy hip hop. Let's get it. Like, I love that. I mean, I imagine that's how actors feel. Like, they get a new role. You don't want to play Steven Seagal every time.
So one of the questions I was going to write down and just didn't for some reason was, is some of your speed attributable to, okay, so now you've finished this track, and we'll get back to this one. We still have to mix it. But let's say that you've finished this song and you've already got your sounds. And you've got everything dialed in. So it'd be very easy to make another West Coast hip hop song with a different attitude, a different tempo, a different melody. So you don't do that, because I know a lot of the guys who are highly productive at doing instrumental cues will do that. They nail one good dramedy cue. They might do 3 more that day, because it's just that easy when you've got everything dialed in. Now it's just down to melody and mood and attitude. So
and I totally see the value in that, but no, that doesn't work for me in my creative process. I have that, and maybe that may have cost me some things here and there, but if I do sign a song and someone goes, give me another one, like, that's harder for me, because I feel like I did that already, though. This is what I would do if you asked me to do that.
Yeah.
This is what I'll give you. If you ask me for that song, I'm afraid I'll give you the same song again. Like, because that's, you gave me, like, give me another one. Give me another one. Could I do it? Have I done it? Yeah. A guy hired me to do a song because he found me through an exclusive library owner that you know and love. Somehow found the library owner and asked him if he could license the song. And the guy called me and he was like, I'm not going to do it. He was like, but I'm going to give you his information in case you want to do another song for him. So he gave me the guy's information, and the guy was like, I really love this song. I want to use it for my video, but he wouldn't. So I took essentially that session, and I started just like deleting stuff and replaying it with the same sounds. But that was, sort of a special thing. I don't really like doing that. I just don't. I'm ready to get into the next mood pretty quickly.
Wow. That makes you even more impressive, because I thought for sure that would have been part of your process, that you finish one thing, go, okay, I've already got the Chevy Impala built, 4 doors, 4 wheels, steering wheel. All I need to do now is paint this one red and change the color of the interior and give it an FM radio versus an AM radio. Wow, you are incredible.
and I don't really use my DAW. I do have a template that I start with, but it's not like some of the intense templates we've seen some Taxi members have, where all their sounds are loaded and they just have them ready to go. I'm often starting with a blank template. What I do have is my master chain loaded, my vocal chain loaded. Those are what's on my template when my session starts. Other than that, everything is blank. So yeah.
What about searching for instruments? I know that part of being fast is not spending an hour and a half picking a bass sound, which is very easy to go down that rabbit hole. Um, Obviously, hip hop, your 5 or 6 preferred bass sounds. Do you have folders of things that you go back to depending on the genre, where so
Yep.
you don't have to search? You've already, when you
Right.
hear something you love, you stick it in a folder of I love this.
Well, yes, is or an instrument. It's not so much a folder. Like I said, with my drums, I'm a lot of times randomizing those drum kits. I have a huge library of drums that I'm randomizing, or I'm playing addictive with my pads, which is like an acoustic drum kit. Like some people use Superior Drummer and BFD and things like that. I have addictive drums, and that's my acoustic kits. I have a ton of those, so those I'll play. Those just sound like acoustic drums. But as far as my electric drums, I will randomize a kit and play them on my pads all the time. I hate searching for sounds. This is why people, producers out there, get your stuff that you like and learn it really well. And I choose synths and tools based on their ability to randomize their parameters. So like I also use Omnisphere 90% of the time for my synths, and I will literally type in lead random and start going down the list, rather than, because I mean, if you think about synthesizers and your preset libraries in your synths, or even stuff you've called it, like you can't name a synth something you'd remember. Wiry Ghost, sometimes it works, but it's like most of the time synths are so weirdly named, you wouldn't be able to find what you were looking for even if you knew it. And synthesis itself and programming a synth, while fun, is very time consuming. So I love randomization. I use Omnisphere, I use Zeta, and Zeta has a shuffle button, and I am like, ooh, that's a cool sound. I'd rather stumble upon an awesome synth than spend 20 minutes trying to find a lead that I'm looking for. And I still have to, like, sometimes there's just a sound in my head that I need to create. I will have to open up Massive and turn the dials till I get it. But I like stumbling upon cool sounds that I have in my preset libraries. But yes, picking the right instruments. So when you said bass, I have a bass synth that I use, a bass VST that I will go to for hip hop. It has almost like a vinyl crackle to it when you play it. I love that. If I'm doing stuff for Y&R, I'm using like a Scarby bass, like something that just sounds like a regular bass player, and I can add awesome effects to it to give it like a slap sound. I can change, but I'm not trying to spend a lot of time going through synths and sounds. I love the Rhodes. I will a lot of times use a Rhodes and just twist up the effects on it so that it could sound different. But I am absolutely going for speed. So much so that it may appear to be rushing, but when it gets down to it, I am spending those times on those 3 things I told you. I am putting my all into those that amount of time for each of those things.
Okay, so now we've got the vocal. Let's assume
All right,
maybe you put in a couple of harmony
finish the
parts.
vocals now. Everything's done. Ad libs are done. All the recording aspect, the tracking is done. I will then start mixing my vocals. I'm going
So you start your mix with the vocals, or you're talking about
put.
just really?
Yep. Yep. I'm gonna mix the vocals. Now I still have, at this point, I probably still have what I would call the blueprint of the instrumental and my vocals recorded. I will mix the vocals to what I have, because I have a very specific vocal chain. I know how I want my vocals to sound. I'll start processing my vocals, and then I will go back to the instrumental and add the remaining ear candy melodies, mutes, solos, things like that that are still in my head. So now that I'm listening to the second verse, that melody that I didn't use is now a synth pluck. And it only comes in the second verse. Now the supervisor has that section to choose from that's sort of a different sounding section. I love being, and they love supervisors being able to give them building blocks of a song that they could rearrange and make something totally different. I taught a class once where I went over that, where it's like I left the intro open and used those same instruments later on in the bridge so that the supervisor could cut the bridge drums and put them on the intro if he wanted to, just because those sections didn't have the same instruments playing. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
Michael? Where you so nothing's overlapping. I love doing that, and supervisors love that, where they can cut it up and not screw anything up. You guys taught me about good edit points, and a lot of the times that influences my decision to start off of the one. So a lot of my verses, whether rap or singing, the one will hit boom, and then I can't something boom, something else. You know what I mean? Because now you've got a one for the supervisors to cut that doesn't have an overlapping vocal every time. They can cut out a section, they can repeat a section. That's the process. So after I'm done adding that stuff, and I like everything I've added, I realize I didn't add too much. If I did add too much, I did what you said earlier, and I'll move it around. All right, this shouldn't be here. I'll mute the bass here, and I'll take that out, and I'll move it towards the end. This will just go in the outro. So then it's arrangement at that point. Very quick. I spend very quick on that. Try not to overdo it.
Are you talking 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to make sure there's not too much going on anywhere. There's not too much overlap. There's not too many synths playing at the same time. I'll spread them out. I'll delete them. Sometimes I'll be like, you know what? This sounded better when no vocals were on it.
I like the fact that you don't think linearly, that, it's building blocks, Legos. Years ago, I'm going to steal a moment of your interview time here, but it's a story worth telling. Probably back in 1975, I was working with the legendary producer engineer Tom Dowd on an Eric Clapton project. Eric discovered two guys playing acoustic guitars and bongo drums sitting behind his house in the Bahamas on the beach. They clearly camped out there hoping he would stumble upon them. He did. He fell in love with them. Their names were Tom and Don. I still remember after 40 years. He brought them to Miami, brought them in the studio Criteria, and got RSO Records to pay for a demo that they thought demos that they thought would turn into a record deal. They had a song called Little Things, which I can't believe I remember the title. Anyway, it had a 4-count drum turn that was like coming out of the bridge going into the last chorus, like boom, in this big-ass chorus. And everybody's going to lunch. And Tommy, I was cleaning up something, like dropping liters on something. Tommy put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Want me to show you how to take a good song and make it a great song with a razor blade?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't go to lunch. Hang out with me." All right. And he showed me, take that. He said, "That's the most special thing in that song. People won't even get to it because the rest of the song doesn't invite them in, doesn't get their attention soon enough. So we're going to take that 4-count drum thing and move it right to the head." And now, and I'm sitting there going, and Tommy's like, "Come on already. You can always put it back together if the edit doesn't work." He was yelling at me in a funny way. So I did the edit, hit play, and it's like, boom, right into the song. It exploded. And they came back from lunch and listened to it and said, "Tommy, you're a genius." So the fact that you think like that tells me that there is some genius. It's not just all hard work, or maybe it's learned genius. I don't know. But the fact that you're doing it tells me that you've arrived at a level, and I'm sure that you're always getting better and learning more and moving forward. But good on you for not thinking linearly, because a lot of us grew up in the era of tape, and we do think we restrict our own musical arrangement and editing thinking by the fact that things are linear. And obviously anybody who's worked on a DAW for any amount of time knows that it's not linear, but sounds like you're taking it to a level that it should be at. So anyway, sorry, I stepped on your flow.
What's happening is similar to, like, if you're on Google Maps and you're like looking at your house, and then you zoom out a little bit and you're looking at your town, and you zoom out a little bit and you're looking at the state, you zoom out a little bit. That's like how I'm making these songs. I'm very in, kick drum, bass line. Then I'm zooming out. Title, chorus. verse. I'm backing up, and by the time I'm now at this section that we're talking about, where I've mixed the vocals, I have an instrumental that I like. I'm now like backed up. I'm no longer specifically like that kick drum has already been dealt with. I dealt with that in this stage, you know, and now I'm backing up, and I can sort of start listening and looking at the whole piece of the song, and that's when a lot of those finishing touches will come in. That's when mastering comes in. So I'll bounce the song at the proper level, and now I'm done with that, and I'm mastering now. I'm just getting up the level. I'm making any of the creative choices are done at that point, and I'm just listening to the whole piece. How is everything fitting together? And being with the references. I want sonically to match those references. That's where I'm going exact. You know how when people say don't match the reference, you know, don't copy the references, that's absolutely true. And I touched on that. Like, you can't copy the references,
right,
or you're screwing yourself. But sonically copy those bastards, man. Listen
do
to
you
what
use any plugins or software to analyze the EQ and stuff?
Compare by Melda. I know most Taxi members use Metric AB or whatever it's called now. But I have this bundle by Melda Productions, and it has a plugin called Compare. And essentially you load in as many references as you want, or you can send a signal from DAW tracks. So you don't have to have the WAV file. You know, you can just sort of send a signal to it, and it'll listen. And then you can just hit one button and listen to each. You know, I'm A, B, C, D, and then let go, and you're listening to mine, and I'm back on C, and I'm off on C, and I'm back on mine. And they have a blind test mode where you can blind test your mixes against each other. So I love that software, Compare. But I know most people.
How does it visually display the comparisons so that you can see where you're at?
You have waveforms, you have LUFS, you have a full metering section. It's fantastic. I love that plugin, and that helps me at that stage so well, because I am at that point. I want to do sonically what the engineer was doing. I want to think how he was thinking. So now that I have an arrangement and a song and lyrics that are not the same as the references, I'm now back in those references. What were they doing, and how did they get there? That's also a fun part for all the engineers out there. What were they doing, and how did they get there? How did Dre do that? Why does it sound like that there? Why did he use a phaser right there? What happened? Why do you hear the hook better in this section? Oh, wait, the hi-hats aren't there anymore. I just realized he dropped the hi-hats. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now the high end isn't as crispy. I get that. Or wait a minute. I'm sitting here with this song created in 2023 with perfect DAW, and this was done on tape. Maybe I should throw a tape emulation on there and drop it down to 7.5 inches per second. And now we've got a nice high-end roll-off that sounds like what maybe happened to their record, because it wasn't just an EQ rolling off the high end. Nobody did that. They didn't want to just do that because no one wants to disturb the clarity in the balance. But if you're giving a nice tilt that tape can give, all of a sudden now there's that organic feel. So I am at that point trying to think like the engineer that worked on the record. I want to know what they did, and then by the end of it, I want it to be just as loud. I want you to be able to hear back and forth and not make, just sounds like it's off that album or off the next song that came on the radio afterwards, and you don't have to touch your radio, you don't have to touch your EQ. And sometimes that means that my songs don't all sound the same. I don't always have the same preset on my master that's going to get it to that same level every time and it's ready to go. If I am going, now we're back on this brief, if I've got this West Coast hip hop brief and it's Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, when mine comes out of the press, out of the oven, it's going to sound like it was made unless they don't want that.
Everybody.
Yep.
Interesting. I have no idea. I'm hardwired into Ethernet, and I know that your signal is good. We'll give it another 20 seconds. If it doesn't work, then we're going to reconnect. I'll have you dial back in. The internet, you got to love it. And then we're in yellow, and now we're green.
All right, we're clearing up. It looks like it got through its hiccup. We were going through a canyon is what happened.
Laurel Canyon. At least we went through a musical one. Okay, so now you're at the end of this process. You've done all this stuff, and you bounce it. Do you ever stem any of your stuff? I know stems are probably a little more extensive and frequently used with instrumental stuff, but do you create stems while you're in the moment and you've got everything happening? What's your final process when you're ready to ship?
Yeah. Usually I'm gonna do instrumental, full mix, a cappella is what I'll have bounced out. Sessions will always be able to be recalled, and stems will always be able to be given. But as smart as it would be to have stems, and we were talking about this, Michael, for everybody to have stems, you know, production libraries and supervisors, not many ask for it, but I hope that changes because there's so many things that could be done with stemming out.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the shows I work with just don't do it, but they could, and it would be a great idea. I'm always ready. I don't ever I any session I can always recall, and that's sort of part of the reason that I don't use too much out of the box hardware. That makes things like rebounces and stems a little more difficult. But you know, you can take pictures of the stuff. But I like to keep it in the box if I can, especially for sync stuff. I'm not trying to get fancy. I can No one would probably notice if I used a real API EQ or if I used a Waves API. You know, maybe me, I'd go, "Oh, that's sweet." But I can. If you're getting to the same ending, you know, those are for the guys like us when we know, like, "Hey, dude, I used the API on that one." You'd be like, "Yeah, that's awesome. Was that cool?" Like, but
Somebody once said to me, "It's not going to sell one more record."
no, and
it is for us.
If that's what it took to get, you know, to get your bass to sound better, you could. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to learn. It was the same thing when I learned about, you know, great mics and great preamps. When I would record with great mics or great preamps, I'm like, okay, so I can get there a little faster, but it's nothing I couldn't do before.
Right.
So there's no excuse. There's no, well, I don't have any gear. I don't use any gear. I have a rack, and I record one mic at a time. And if I'm recording drums, you know, I'm not. You're just putting them through the preamps on your interface. You're just getting them down, and then you can do all that good stuff later in your DAW. There's so many amazing plugins now, and it's any of the experts, you know, the Vanderboos, Chuck Henry, they'll all tell you, they're like, no fancy plugin got me any more placements. You know, sometimes it gets us to places easier. That's why they make plugins, because like Atlas. I got Atlas so that I could randomize my drums. But before I just had to look a little harder for my kick drums. So it was just took a little longer. But so
what does randomize my drums mean? I'm OG. I don't know.
So it splits this software. You can load in. So you point it to a folder on your hard drive or several folders within folders, where all of your drum sounds are contained. So you have kicks and folders all over the place, snare drum sounds and folders all over the place. So this organizes them into a map, and then lays. I use two different pad controllers here, so I can change the setup. But let's just say 16 pads on the screen, and pad 1 is a kick, pad 2 is a snare, pad 3 is a clap, pad 4 is a hi-hat, and so on.
Yeah.
And when you hit the randomize button, it randomizes a kit based on your sounds. So now you have a new kick, new snare, new, and then each drum can be you just hit a randomize button and a new kick pops up.
Oh, wow.
So you're not searching.
So it's like literally physically changing out the drums and retuning everything, just really fast.
And do it on the fly. And if you have, let's say you have drums playing through it already, and you just hit a new kit, the whole sound changes. Even if the pattern's the same that you're playing. 16th note hi-hats and boom, 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 boom. You change that kit and it's like instant sound tone shifting. And I love that because that's part of why my process has become faster, is because I choose synths and plugins that can make my workflow faster. Not tweak my creative brain to want to sit for an hour and a half and play with a new toy. I do that too. Like I said, I was really excited to install something the other day that I ended up forgetting to use when I was done. So I was like, well, okay, next time. And I watched like YouTube videos, Michael, on it for like an hour, and I like never installed it just because I was looking at it on screen for so long. I assumed I had it, and then I went into my normal process and totally forgot to call it up. So, and I think a lot of engineers will say the same thing. They're like, oh, I bought this new thing and I used my stock plugin for my DAW because it was quicker and I know it better. But yeah, speed comes in the ability to choose your draw your weapon fast, man. Draw that weapon fast. You gotta, if you need the right holster, you gotta have the right clothes. Boom, and then you do it over and over and over and over again. I want to be able to get a brief and already be thinking about what is happening before I'm done reading the brief. I should be already like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready. Let me go. Let me go. Let me go.
You are the exact opposite of people who haven't learned what you know yet, that say, well, it takes you like a month to do a song. I mean, you would die of stress if it took you a month to do a song. That would kill you.
I know that the song is no good, in my opinion. It should be out. You should be on the next one. And this is stuff, these things that we're talking about, the really important stuff we talked about today, so much of it I learned from Taxi. So much of it I learned from Taxi members, from you, from panelists, from classes that were given at the rally, the forums, TAXITV, with the people that you choose. The people you choose for TAXITV aren't like to gloat or to make you look good, although we all love making you look good. It's to show the members how possible it is. We were all just, yes, I was a recording engineer, sure, but I didn't have 2,000 songs. This doesn't date back to 2001. These 2,000 songs started in 2016.
Wow. I
had a catalog before that of tracks that I made for other artists, and I had my albums from when a couple albums from when I had a record deal, but none of that stuff stood, and none of that stuff gets synced. I mean, every now and then I got a call from someone who I respect, and they were like, do you have anything you recorded in 2004? And I did. It wasn't great though, but I mean, so can I go in my back catalog every now and then? Maybe, but I don't. This is all stuff that happened since 2016 to now. This is skills I picked up from Taxi, and because you guys made it so easy, and I love listening and absorbing, I am a forever student. I am, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm a martial arts guy. I'm always looking for a sensei. Like, I am a guy who loves a good teacher. So when you laid it out plain and simple, and all the people you brought to the rally laid it out plain and simple, and everybody on TAXITV went, this is what you do. I went, okay, I'll do that. That's what I'll do. And you talk to Vanderbo, and he goes, this is what I do. And you go, okay.
And some people are so resistant to that. They feel that my circumstance is different. I've got to reinvent the wheel. Tony Robbins, back in like 1989, 90, before I started Taxi, maybe even into the first year or so when Taxi was a thing, I read a lot of Tony Robbins books, the self-help guy with the big teeth. And he always says, somebody has done what you want to do before you. Just learn exactly what they did. Imitate it. Put your own salt and pepper on it. But yeah, the road is there. The path is, the runway is lit up. Just get on the damn runway. We're pretty much through. We got 17 minutes left. Are you up for doing some Q&A with the folks in the chat room?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. The last thing I'll say about what you were just saying is the greatest part of what we do is, be it an engineer that you worked with or a collaborator I worked with, every one of us is so eager to share what we did on those records. You know what I mean? You will not walk up to an engineer and be like, dude, what'd you do on that bass? And they go, excuse me, I won't share that with you. I made a Grammy off that. You figure it out. They'll go, oh, dude, I put it through this and I used an old cable and I laid a wet T-shirt on the snare. They can't wait. They can't wait to tell you what they did. So that's just the last thing I'll say about it.
Somebody I was interviewing at the rally, we were talking about that back in my day, at Criteria. At the end of the day, we would all end up in somebody's control room, hanging out, listening to their bass sound, or listening. I remember we listened to Intervisions by Stevie Wonder over and over and over with half a dozen of the world's best engineers in the room going, how did they do that? And we would all compare notes. And the next day, everybody's working on their bass sounds. Nowadays, you guys are all isolated. The collaborative nature of things has gotten less and has changed. I mean, we do have the speed of the internet. We have forums. The Taxi forum is a great place to pick stuff up.
But trade-offs, because I would never, if it was all in person, I wouldn't have some of the friendships that I do now.
Yeah.
But you do miss a little bit of that in the room stuff, but the technology has made up for it. The ability of what we can do, sending stuff back and forth, you could never do that. The ability to jump back in a song and fix it, you could never do that. So it's some trade-offs, but I agree. But collaborating is just as fun because we all get to do what we do, in the comfort of our own home, which sometimes makes it easier too.
That's why the road rally has become so important. That's why the Quarantinis, doing a show 5 days a week during the lockdown. I mean, so much collaboration happened because people were hanging with people. So we've got our first question, and yes, Peach has got it right. Anybody who's got a question, I would really appreciate if you put the word question in all caps just to make it pop out as they fly by. Peaches Cranko. Hey, Peaches, back home already. Saw her at the rally. Why do you use M Compare instead of Metric AB?
Because I own the Melda bundle. I own the bundle that came with M Compare. I did not own Metric AB. There was not a personal choice in that. I saw that I owned that, and I went on YouTube and learned how to use it, and that's the only reason. I'm sure Metric AB work. I'm sure all of them work in a similar way. I just haven't used it.
Simple enough. This one's from Katrina Seifert. What do you look for in your collaborators now?
Ooh, good question. I touched on this in the last TAXITV. Them doing something different than I do. Again, I touched on it lightly, so I'll go do it quickly. You would think you would want to collaborate with people that do the same thing you do, but I like collaborating with people that do something different, that can make an instrumental that I can't create, or have in genres that I'm not great at, or a female vocalist. I'm not a female vocalist, so I'm looking for something I sort of can't bring to the table at this point, which is usually different styles of instrumental or vocals.
All right. Here's one from Drumbeat Junkie. Hard to get those drums in a vein or through the needle. Marcus, how often or when do you submit songs to the Copyright Office?
That was something I did in the first year. I was a Taxi member before I realized recording the song into your DAW is copyright. They would have to prove they recorded it first. If your song gets stolen by a famous artist, remember, things don't go backwards. If somebody's going to steal your music that makes less money than you do, then they can have it. But if somebody is going to steal your music, like let's say Ed Sheeran steals your song off SoundCloud, you would have proof you created it first. Would I say it stands up in court? I mean, it'll be a really big deal in court. I don't send things to the Copyright Office anymore. Short answer. It's to me a waste of money.
Yeah, most of our members that do instrumental cues don't, because no single cue on its own, they're extremely unlikely to make enough money that having a lawyer write a letter will cost you more than that single cue will earn. Songs, however, I do recommend if somebody's writing songs that could potentially be cut by a huge artist, I would copyright or register the copyright on that.
Yeah, if you're pitching to artists, for sure, that's a different bag. I don't do that too much anymore, and if it is, it's through a personal connection, the artist that I still work with and write for. And we have contracts that we go back and forth with. But because then you'd have to copyright the lyrics and the music separately as recordings. It's a little bit of money and time. I understand wanting to protect yourself, but again, I'm writing for TV and film. I have proof. There's probably placements. It's on Spotify. It's going to be tough to prove Ed Sheeran didn't steal it if I've got it in a bunch of different places, and I can call up a friend of mine at a publishing house and say, hey, when did you sign this? And can you put it down on a legal document that says you signed this song in 2015 and Ed Sheeran tried to say he wrote it in 2017. Again, I'm sorry, Ed. I know you don't do this, man. Free Ed Sheeran. No, I know he's a good guy. I don't mean to keep saying his name like he would steal your song. It's just the first that came up. But no, I don't worry about it too much. I have proof my songs are used in places. So
right. Out in the wild, as it were. Here's another one from Peaches. When asked to create 15 more cues, just like the one you just did, how do you bow out gracefully?
The people I work with know that's not my strong suit. They know that that's not what I do.
You never have to bow.
No, when I was asked for it, I did it. I just didn't like it as much. When I was asked for it, I did it. But very quickly, I talked to a publisher once and said, hey, how come, you never asked for instrumental cues? They said, because you do vocals. And so it's just one of those things where they know that that's probably where I'm going to shine more. And you get two for it. You get a vocal and an instrumental out of it.
Songs from a Headband wants to know. He first says, he or she says, thank you for doing this. Do you do work for hires where a producer could use your voice?
Yep. Every day. It's a good percentage of the income sometimes to do work for hires because, and I touched on this last time, but I'll say it again. I consider work for hire when I didn't contribute to the creation of the song. The song's written, the melody's done. They have somebody singing a reference vocal. They essentially send me a finished song. I'm just singing it at that point, or rapping it, or whatever it is. If I
What
have to
about
come,
when you enter into a gray area, you hear their reference and you come up with a substantial contribution, like you come up with a better way, a better lyric for the hook, and it's killing you. Do you just like shove that down and move it to the side and forget about it, or you might reach out to them and say, I've got an idea. Let me send it to you. If you like it, then let's talk about what kind of arrangements that ever happen or no?
no, I have made slight changes in things like melody to make my voice be able to sing it, or let's say the reference vocalist couldn't hit a certain note. So I've made changes. I don't consider that writing credit. I'm
Right,
getting paid to perform, and that's helping me perform it better. And if I did a lyric change, it would be so simple. It wouldn't be like the whole hook change. So
right.
that's different. If I
All right, it's
rewrote,
not
or
substantial.
essentially, if they send me lyrics and an instrumental and nobody sang me a reference vocal, meaning I have to write the melody, we're in a different territory at that point. And still, I may just charge more as opposed to asking for writer credit. Um, because that I'm in work for hire mode at that point. I'm not doing a collaboration. So that to me the lines don't blur. If someone's hiring me, they know what they're hiring me for. They're not trying to hire me and sneak a collaboration out of me.
All right, here's a question from Richard Emmett. Regarding when you write a song for a female vocalist, how do you get somebody to do it quickly? How closely do you monitor the performance, etc.?
How do I get someone to do it quickly? I try to work with people that understand I need it quickly. I ask beforehand, is any way you'd be able to get this to me by Friday? They will answer. They'll let me know. I have a vocalist I love working with, but she always needs 2 weeks, no matter what. That's her deal. I need 14 days. So I know that going in, so I have to have that. So how do I monitor that? I try to work with artists that are used to working in sync, and are not uncomfortable doing that. I'll ask, are you comfortable writing this fast? Can you get it to me that fast? Do you record yourself? Can I hear stuff you've done? There's some pre talk that goes in before something like that happens. But as far as monitoring it, um, if you tell me you're going to have it to me by a certain time, I trust that's what you're going to do.
Here's a great question from Keith LeBrant. This is the best question ever.
Man,
Is it true that you're working on an AI plugin that will have a hologram of you to feed random inspirational quotes to the user to help them get closer to your incredible pace?
Keith, I love you, man. Keith and I have a bunch of songs together. He's incredible, man. Yeah. No, I'm not doing that. I am working very closely with a cloning facility, that will hopefully have another one of me to be dealing with my family upstairs while I'm doing stuff like this. Other than that, but then once he gets his hands on my wife, man, it's over after that. We're gonna have big problems.
Here's from one from Yo Polly.
Ollie.
Question for my brother. When writing instrumentals, do you follow the same workflow, like always starting with a melodic riff or a drum beat, or does your creative process wildly vary?
Nope. If it's just instrumental, I'm just doing part A of that process. Um, so much so that I may still leave it in that skeleton form, that blueprint form, and add stuff later after I get the vocals. Or if it's just an instrumental cue, which again I don't do much anymore, where I submit them. If I'm doing an instrumental, it's to send to another artist to sing. So I'm still in that same process. It's just part A, and there's no B or C.
Here's one from a name I can barely pronounce. Tolu Midi. Tulumadi. I don't know. It's probably profane or something, and I just haven't figured. Everybody's laughing. It's like Lasco's so dumb. What are you using for your music publishing administration?
Music publishing administrator, meaning what? What does that mean?
This is somebody who's probably not yet familiar with the ways of the world in the sync industry.
I have a bunch of different publishers. At least 20 that I work with on a regular basis. And I don't want to like name them, that's not really fair
Right.
on this, but yeah, I work with a lot of different publishers. Just if this is the question, I think it is. I don't have like a publishing deal where one person represents my catalog. Most sync writers do not do that. We sign things on a song by song basis. There's nobody that owns me or represents me. Those publishers represent pieces of my catalog, and they do an incredible job at it. They know your music inside and out. As much as you think some of us are experts at making the music. These guys and gals are experts at curating. They're experts at sending. They really know your catalog. I've been so impressed with some publishers when they know my music so well. Like, it's one thing to have to like sit behind which is not common, but it's like if someone sends out a brief and you have to respond like, hey, you have these songs of mine, right? You're sending me out a brief with stuff you have. Why don't you go through those? It's great when you get someone that sends you like, hey, I got this brief, I sent out these songs that you have already, do you have any more? So working with great publishers is fantastic. If you're talking about distribution, I use DistroKid. I love DistroKid.
Yeah, and a word to that person who doesn't seem to know a lot about this end of the business. If you work with DistroKid, CD Baby, TuneCore, and you check that little box or sign the additional agreement that says you would like them to be your publishing admin, you have just screwed yourself out of signing with any of the production music libraries.
I don't know that DistroKid has that. They may, that I'm not aware of, but I don't think DistroKid has a publishing side. But yeah, be careful what you're agreeing to. I know the internet has made us feel like we have to check every box and agree to every thing, or we don't get to do it. If I don't check the boxes, they'll say no. But you don't need that if you're working for Sync. But hopefully that helped answer that question.
That's it. No more questions. Come on, you guys. They're just really slow typists. You know what? I've got a question for you. How do you balance work life and family life? Because I know your family means everything to you.
Yeah. A while back, my wife convinced me that a day off was a good idea. Being my own boss for so long and working in the studio for so many years, I was accustomed to working every day. So I did negotiate a day off. I take off Thursdays, and I try to stop working when my kids get home from school and start doing dad stuff. So I start really early. I start about 5 in the headphones, and then, doing a lot of the stuff that doesn't need to be done with speakers on. And then I'll get, I work early. I start early is what helps. But yes, I balance it, and it's still tough. But I try to stop when school's out. But I'm not super great at it. I'm always thinking about music. I'm sort of always answering emails. There's always stuff coming in. But I do the best I can because it's very important to me. So I don't just work all day and night. I don't work during the night. I try to spend time with my family after the game.
The most important thing, absolutely. And you are not alone. So many of our successful members start random Purcell 4:30 in the morning and gets 2.5 hours of work done before the kids come down for their post toasties. You guys all have that in common. It's just like you realize you can't do it part-time and get a full-time result.
No. You can start there, but there's definitely going to have to be a moment where you go all in and you
said that to me at the first rally. You and your mom walked up to me and said, "This is amazing. We can't believe it. Better than we expected, and we are going to go all in." And when you walked away from me, I thought, "Yep, they will." And you did. Here's a question from Paulie again. Do you rely on a default vocal bus chain?
Yes, I do. I have my vocal bus chain, so much so that I have a plugin in there that is on a version 4 that I still use version 2 of, because I'm just so used to my vocal chain. Yes, every so often I'll go on a like a hunt and start looking through and demoing new plugins and trying to implement them into my chain. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yes, I have a vocal chain that I run my vocals through every time.
All right.
It varies how it sounds, but yeah, I do have the same chain. Yeah.
I've got to wrap this up because we've got another thing starting in 6 minutes and 42 seconds. Thank you. This was great, man. Again, you've exceeded my expectations and the expectations of all of us watching. And if you ever decide you want to write a book, think of me first as your publisher. I would be honored. Just amazing stuff. And I could not be more proud of you. I really am. I'm not just saying that to stroke you in front of a room full of people, but you deserve every penny you make and all the good fortune that has come and will come your way. Congratulations, Marcus Cohen, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Taxi, for everything.
Thank you, Marcus. Bye-bye.